My daughter Jocelyn called every Sunday for 5 months after Malcolm died. She always started with the weather in Mississauga, then eased into the real reason. "Mum, I worry about you in that house alone. Come stay with us, just try it." I always said no. The house Malcolm and I had built on Albright Road had been ours for 31 years. His coffee mug was still on the third shelf where he always kept it. Grief had not emptied that house. It had filled it with a different kind of presence, one I was not yet ready to leave. But Jocelyn kept calling. By April, her arguments had worn grooves into me. She talked about the guest bedroom she'd repainted sage green. She sent photographs of the white quilt, the lamp Malcolm's sister had given us that Jocelyn had quietly kept for years. She talked about morning walks with her daughter Sasha before school, about her son Max's birdhouse in the backyard, about Sunday barbecues with too much food. I was 64 years old. Malcolm had been gone 5 months. The silences in that house on Albright Road had started to feel less like memory and more like punishment. Before I agreed, I asked Jocelyn one question. "If I come with nothing but myself, no sale money, no contribution to the house, do you still want me?" She sounded hurt. "Mum, I want my mother, that's it." I believed her because I needed to. That was my first mistake. What Jocelyn did not know, what no one in my family knew, was that I could have bought her entire street and not noticed the withdrawal. Malcolm and I had spent 33 years building Hadley Facility Services. We started with a used floor polisher and one commercial contract cleaning a medical clinic in Stony Creek. By the time we retired, we had service contracts with 17 hospitals, 40 office buildings, and 2 municipal transit facilities across southern Ontario. Malcolm understood equipment and logistics. I understood pricing, clients, and the gap between what people said they could afford and what they would actually pay to fix a problem. When we sold the company to a national facilities group 4 years before Malcolm died, the proceeds, combined with our investment portfolios, an RRSP that had grown for 30 years and 3 commercial properties held through our company, Hadley Holdings Inc., left me with assets worth approximately $8.7 million. I still drove a 9-year-old Subaru. I bought my jeans at Winners. Malcolm and I had once lost a contract worth $60,000 a year because we had stopped paying attention to ordinary numbers. That lesson did not leave us. My daughter knew we had done well. She did not know how well. Malcolm had always said that telling people what you have changes the way they listen. After his funeral, watching certain relatives move through the house during the reception, I understood exactly what he meant. I kept the house on Albright Road instead of listing it. I told Jocelyn it was tied up in estate administration, which was partly true. I did not mention the commercial properties. I did not mention the 2-bedroom suite on the 8th floor of Hadley House on York Boulevard in Hamilton. The building Malcolm and I had owned since 2008, which we used after late board meetings and the occasional concert at First Ontario. The suite was furnished and ready. My property manager, Mr. Ferris, knew to keep it that way. I arrived at Jocelyn's house on a Friday afternoon in May with 2 suitcases, a bag of books, and a carefully hidden fortune. By Wednesday morning, I was sleeping on a folding cot in the utility room beside the hot water tank, listening to the dryer run a load of Jocelyn's online shop inventory, and reading a note Jocelyn's friend Cynthia had left on the bathroom counter. "Sorry if I used your shampoo. Hope that's okay. Ugh." I read it twice. Then I took out the phone my family did not know I carried and called Mr. Ferris. "This is Lorna Hadley," I said. "Please air out the suite. I'll be home Thursday morning." The guest bedroom had looked ready in the photographs Jocelyn sent. When I arrived Friday, it was stacked floor to ceiling with inventory for our online home goods shop. Boxed candles, linen tea towels still in plastic wrap, a photography light on a tripod, a folding table covered in tissue paper and bubble wrap. Holiday pre-orders had come in faster than expected. She would clear it Saturday, she said, one day. My suitcases went into the upstairs loft instead, beside the pull-out sofa where Max played video games. Friday dinner was warm enough to almost convince me. Sasha helped me find spots for my books. Max dragged me to the window to show me the birdhouse and described the chickadee he'd spotted twice that week. Joel barbecued and Jocelyn poured wine and said she was glad I had finally chosen family over an empty house. That phrase sat wrong with me. Our house on Albright Road had not been empty while Malcolm was alive, but I let the words pass. Midway through dinner, my son-in-law Joel asked whether I'd spoken to a real estate agent yet. "Not yet," I said. "I'm trying this first." Jocelyn set down her fork. "You haven't listed it?" "No." Joel glanced at Jocelyn. Something passed between them that I filed away without commenting on. Late that night, I came downstairs for water and heard them in the kitchen. Joel's voice low. "She's supposed to list it. I assumed she'd list it." Jocelyn, she will, she just needs to settle in first. We can't wait on the renovation loan. The bank wants confirmation by the end of next month. I stood in the dark hallway with one hand on the wall. Renovation loan. No one had mentioned a renovation loan to me. Saturday morning arrived with Jocelyn's university friend Cynthia, who appeared at the door at 9 a.m. with a rolling suitcase and a laptop bag. She had a conference at McMaster that weekend. Just until Tuesday, Jocelyn said. The guest bedroom, still packed, became Cynthia's. When I asked where I would sleep, Jocelyn led me downstairs to the utility room at the back of the house. A folding cot beside the shelving unit, a spare blanket, a space heater that Joel said shouldn't be used near the water heater because of ventilation. We use it when we need overflow space, Jocelyn said. It's insulated. I looked at her. You asked me to come and live with you. It's 2 nights, Mum. I said I would manage. Families are untidy in transition, and I did not want my first weekend to become a grievance. I wanted to see whether the arrangement would correct itself without me forcing it. That night, Sasha came down with 2 blankets and sat on an overturned storage bin beside the cot. This isn't right, she said. You didn't do it. Dad should have said something. I looked at the closed door that led back into the house. Yes. Sasha pulled a blanket around her shoulders. Mum thinks you're going to sell the house on Albright and give them money for the renovation. She's been talking about it since before you agreed to come. I asked what she had heard. Sasha hesitated the way teenagers do, when they're deciding whether loyalty to their parents or to their grandmother matters more in this particular moment. Then she told me. Jocelyn had met with a contractor. The renovation was an addition above the garage, a studio suite with skylights, a private entrance, built-in shelving throughout. On paper, it was described as a suite for Lorna. In the drawing Sasha had seen spread across the dining room table, the larger portion was clearly designed as a professional studio for Jocelyn's online business. A photography wall, a product display area, climate-controlled storage for inventory. My space, labeled Lorna's room, occupied one corner, smaller than the bathroom attached to Jocelyn's studio. They said you'd pay because it was partly for you, Sasha whispered. But it's mostly for Mum's business. I asked whether Joel had seen the full drawings. He designed part of them. The dryer finished its cycle and clicked off. The utility room went quiet. Go to bed, I told Sasha. Don't let your mother see you were here. After she left, I thought about Malcolm, who would have understood immediately and said 4 words. Get the papers ready. At 11 that night, a message came through on my secondary phone. Mr. Ferris had been contacted by a real estate agent, requesting a market assessment on the Albright Road property and asking about staging options for a rapid spring listing. The agent had said she was coordinating on behalf of the family. The inquiry had come from Jocelyn's email address. Sunday morning, the door between the utility room and the main house was locked. I needed the bathroom and knocked several minutes before Joel answered, already irritated. You woke the dog, he said. There was no dog. I needed to use the bathroom, I said. Later, Jocelyn explained she had locked it out of habit. A security thing, she said. I had arrived as her mother on Friday. By Sunday, I was a security concern. At breakfast, Jocelyn placed a folder beside my plate. Inside was a renovation estimate, $380,000. She walked me through it, the studio walls, the photography lighting rig, the separate street-level entrance for clients. She used the word investment 11 times. She said the house would gain significant value. She said I would have my own private space. I read the room labels. Sasha had been accurate. My space was smaller than the bathroom beside Jocelyn's studio. Who's paying for this? I asked. Joel spoke carefully. We thought, given your house on Albright, once that's sorted. My house isn't sorted. I haven't listed it. We thought once you settled in, it would make sense. The equity is sitting there. You're here with us. It would solve everything. I asked whether this had been the plan when they invited me. Neither of them answered directly. You said you wanted me, I said to Jocelyn, not my house. We do want you. The studio is for your business. It's for the household. Joel leaned forward. It would increase the value of the property. Your space would be purpose-built. Once the house on Albright sells, the timing works perfectly for everyone. I closed the folder. I won't pay for this. Jocelyn's voice cooled. Then I don't know how this arrangement works long-term. I said the arrangement she had described to me, the one with a real bedroom, had not yet materialized. The conversation ended when she left the table. Joel asked me to be patient. He said Jocelyn was under pressure, that the online shop had slowed, that there was credit card debt from expanding the inventory too quickly, that the renovation would help everyone. I asked why neither of them had mentioned any of this before asking me to move in. He said they hadn't wanted me to think it was about money. That afternoon, from a Tim Hortons, 2 blocks from the house, I called Mr. Ferris and asked him to have the suite ready by Thursday. I could have left that day, but my documents, my photographs of Malcolm, and the wooden box containing his signet, ring, and the handwritten ledger from our first year in biz were still in a storage unit booked under Jocelyn's name. I needed those before I left. I also called my lawyer, Mr. Achibi, and asked him to begin arrangements. His response came by evening. Joel and Jocelyn had applied for a HELOC at their bank. The application stated that Lorna Hadley would contribute $220,000 toward the project following the sale of her primary residence. A letter was attached describing this as a confirmed family commitment. The letter was not signed. It quoted a conversation I had never had. The lender had requested written confirmation and proof of funds before proceeding. That explained the urgency. Sunday dinner was quiet. Cynthia talked about her conference. Jocelyn barely looked at me. Max asked if I was staying forever. Jocelyn said that depended on how things went. After dinner, she handed me a printed list. School pickup for Max on weekdays, breakfast preparation, 1 load of laundry daily, Tuesday and Thursday packing shifts for the online shop. Everyone contributes when they live together, she said. You told me you didn't want my help. You said you wanted me. That was before I knew how this was going to go. I placed the list on the counter. I won't be doing this. Her voice rose. After everything we've arranged for you? Joel asked us both to lower our voices. He did not question the list. I looked at Sasha standing at the edge of the kitchen doorway. Watching, 16 years old, watching her grandmother be handed a chore schedule in exchange for a cot beside the water heater. I would not let that lesson stand unanswered. Monday morning at 6:45, Jocelyn opened the utility room. A delivery was coming and she needed access for measurements. You'll have to wait in the kitchen, she said. I was still in my housecoat. Good morning. She looked at the cot, at the blankets Sasha had brought. This isn't working. We agree. You came here with expectations that aren't realistic for a family home with 2 kids and a working mother. I asked what exactly. She had rearranged since I arrived. Then I asked why she had contacted the agent at Albright Road. The careful expression she had maintained all weekend dropped. Someone has to be realistic. Your house is sitting there with nearly $1 million in equity, and you're treating it like a museum. It was Malcolm's home, too. Malcolm is gone. The words were not cruel. They were just exhausted. Jocelyn needs money now. Her business needs a real space now. And you're 64 years old with a fully paid-off property that you're doing nothing with. You told me Joel's company is finally getting traction, I said. Where are they operating from? Something shifted in her face, a small hesitation I noticed and set aside. A rented office space in Hamilton, on the North End. I recognized the address she mentioned. I said nothing. That afternoon, the contractor arrived. He walked through the garage with Joel and Jocelyn, asking questions, measuring. When he came through the kitchen, he introduced himself and said he understood. I had agreed in principle to the project once my existing property was liquidated. I agreed to nothing, I said. Joel's jaw tightened. Do not use my name or any expected contribution from me in any proposal or financing application, I told the contractor, not in any document. He looked from me to Joel, closed his folder, and left within 10 minutes. Jocelyn waited until his truck was out of sight. You humiliated us. I corrected a misrepresentation. In front of a tradesperson we've been working with for months. I corrected it privately this morning. It required a second correction. She stepped toward me. If you're going to be this difficult, I need to know where you actually expect to live. Somewhere with a bathroom I can reach before 7:30. You cannot survive in a hotel on a pension indefinitely. I did not correct her. Monday night, Joel brought me tea and sat on the storage bin across from the cot. He said Jocelyn regretted losing her temper. He said the renovation had always been partly for me. He said he had worried about my well-being since Malcolm died and had wanted to do something real, something lasting. I asked why he had permitted me to sleep in the utility room. He said it was only for a few days. That explains the length, I said, not the decision. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Jocelyn fell apart after your husband died. The invitation was real. She really did want you here. But she also saw a way to fix 2 problems at once. I went along with it because the debt is serious and I didn't want to be the one to say no to her. It was the most honest thing he had said all weekend. The office space your company rents in Hamilton, I said carefully. On the north end, the building on York Boulevard. He looked at me. Hadley Holdings owns that property, I said. Malcolm and I incorporated in 1996. Mr. Ferris manages the portfolio. Joel's face went very still. The lease renewal comes up in July, I said. At current market rate. I did not threaten him. I stated a fact. He understood the shape of it. He stood, picked up the empty mug, and went inside. The lock clicked. Above the light switch was a sticky note Jocelyn had put there Saturday. Please don't leave lights on. Electricity is expensive. I took out my phone. Mr. Ferris, I said, the suite. I'll be there by noon tomorrow. Tuesday arrived gray and cold, that particular kind of Ontario spring morning that can't decide whether winter is actually finished. I was dressed by 5:45. I folded the blankets Sasha had brought, stacked them on the cot, and waited. At 7:15, a car stopped in front of the house. Behind it came a moving truck. Jocelyn opened the back door and went still when she saw my coat and handbag. You're actually leaving? Yes. Lorna. Joel appeared at the top of the stairs. He used my name, which was the first time he'd used it directly all weekend. Jocelyn followed me through the house. Where will you go? Your house is an hour away. I have another place. Her eyes moved over my sensible shoes, my overnight bag, the wool coat she had once complimented. You told me you couldn't maintain 2 properties. I said it was manageable. You interpreted the rest. Sasha appeared at the top of the stairs in her school clothes, saw the moving truck through the window, and came down fast. She didn't say anything. She just held on to me the way she had when she was 8 years old, and I arrived at Christmas. Will I see you? She asked. Whenever your parents bring you. And when you're old enough to come on your own. She didn't let go right away. The driver came to the door with a clipboard. Joel caught my arm at the bottom of the porch steps, gently. At least tell me where you're going. Hadley House, I said. He knew the building. Anyone in Hamilton who paid attention to commercial real estate knew it. 12 floors of mixed-use residential on York Boulevard, stone-facing, a lobby with a green wall that Malcolm had argued over with the architect for 2 full Saturdays. You can't. Joel stopped. Jocelyn came down from the porch. With what money, Lorna? I looked at both of them. The money you were certain I didn't have. Then, I got in the car. The storage unit was already arranged through Mr. Achibi. Jocelyn's access had been removed. The movers loaded my furniture, the framed photographs of Malcolm at the company's first real office, the painting we'd bought in Niagara-on-the-Lake in 1989, and the wooden boxes I had specifically come for. One box was missing. The storage log showed Jocelyn had removed it 2 days earlier. I called her. She said the box was at the house, that they had wanted to keep Malcolm's things safe. I said I would send someone. She said in the background that if I wanted to act like a stranger, she could treat me like one. Mr. Achibi sent a courier. The box arrived sealed but lighter than it should have been. Malcolm's signet ring was gone. Joel claimed he had taken it to a jeweler. A cleaning, he said. But when I mentioned it to Jocelyn on the phone, a receipt appeared in the box within 2 hours. Not from a jeweler, from a pawn shop in Brampton. A loan of $4,000 against the ring. The loan had been repaid that morning, the ring retrieved before I could ask questions. He had not expected me to notice the weight of the box. I held the ring and thought of Malcolm wearing it at every board meeting for 30 years, at every handshake with a client who had become something more. But $4,000 calculation against an irreplaceable object. I called Jocelyn once. That ring does not leave my possession again, I said, and neither does anything else that belonged to Malcolm. She started to explain about a credit card payment that had been overdue. I don't need the reason, I said. I need you to understand the boundary. Hadley House on York Boulevard stood 12 floors above Hamilton's north end, with the escarpment visible from the upper floors on clear days and the lake beyond it. Malcolm had chosen the exterior stone himself. He had once driven back from a meeting in Toronto, specifically to approve a change to the lobby floor tiles. When the car pulled up, Mr. Ferris came out with an umbrella. Welcome home, Mrs. Hadley. The suite on the 8th floor had 2 bedrooms, a long kitchen with the black granite countertops Malcolm preferred, and a balcony facing east. Fresh flowers on the dining table. Earl Grey in the cupboard. A pot of soup in the refrigerator that Mr. Ferris had thought to have delivered. I walked through each room slowly. No cot. No locked door between me and the bathroom. No handwritten note about electricity. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not for what had happened at Jocelyn's house, but for Malcolm. For the fact that he had been right about everything he had ever said quietly, in the way that careful people are right without needing to announce it. I invited Jocelyn and Joel to a meeting at Hadley House the following Saturday. Mr. Achi would attend. I sent the purpose in writing. We would review the renovation proposal, the HELOC application, the removal of Malcolm's property from storage, and my decisions going forward. They arrived 20 minutes late. Jocelyn wore a blazer. Joel looked like he hadn't slept. They stopped inside the lobby and looked at the stone floors, the tall windows, the living wall of plants Malcolm had specified during the renovation. Mr. Ferris handed me a folder near the elevators. The quarterly operating report, Mrs. Hadley. And the July lease renewals are flagged for your review whenever you're ready. Jocelyn looked at him, then at me. The meeting room overlooked the escarpment. Mr. Achibi sat at one end of the table. The contractor joined by video call. A representative from the bank spoke for 4 minutes by phone. The bank confirmed that Joel and Jocelyn had applied for a HELOC stating Lorna Hadley would contribute $220,000 from the sale of her primary residence. The contractor confirmed that the square footage allocated to my suite was less than 1/4 of the proposed addition. The storage log showed Jocelyn removing Malcolm's box without my knowledge. The pawn receipt showed what had happened to the ring. Each fact was plain. Together they made a story Joel could no longer call a misunderstanding. Jocelyn interrupted several times. The application was preliminary. The room labels were working drafts. Joel had always assumed he would eventually inherit Malcolm's ring. Mr. Achibi asked one question after each objection. Did Mrs. Hadley approve this? Jocelyn's answer was always some version of the same sentence. We believed she would. They believed I would sell. They believed I would pay. They believed past kindness had established a pattern that would simply continue. They believed Malcolm's things were already theirs in some practical future tense. I opened the quarterly report and slid the first page across the table. Hadley Holdings, Inc., owner and director, Lorna M. Hadley. Jocelyn read it, then read it again. You own this building. Malcolm and I purchased it in 2008 and renovated it after we sold the company. Joel had gone very still. His eyes moved to the window, then back to the page. The office space on the ground floor, he said slowly. The York Boulevard address. The lease renewal is in July, I said, at current market rate, as I mentioned. He pressed his lips together. There was nothing to say, and he knew it. Jocelyn looked up. How much do you actually have? Even after the utility room, after the false application, after the ring, the number was still the first thing she needed. I could see her still calculating. My total assets are worth approximately $8.7 million, I said. The room went quiet. Then Jocelyn said, and you watched us struggle. Not we were wrong. Not you slept beside the water heater. $8.7 million, and she saw an unpaid balance. I gave you the down payment on your house, I said. I paid for your graduate degree. I contributed to the household the evening I arrived. Your struggle came from spending beyond what you could sustain. That amount of money is nothing to you. It is $220,000. To you. Money does not become nothing because there is more of it. Joel covered his face briefly. Jocelyn pushed back her chair and stood. I told them what I had decided. The $220,000 contribution would not be made. I would not pay their credit card debt. I would not co-sign a renovation loan. Joel's lease would renew in July at market rate. Nothing punitive, nothing given. Sasha and Max would each receive education funds paid directly to their schools. The accounts could not be accessed by their parents. A significant portion of my estate would go toward a project Malcolm and I had discussed for years without ever beginning. We had called it Second Key. Supportive housing for women 55 and older, who were navigating life after bereavement, divorce, or financial exploitation. Women who needed a year or two to find their footing. Women who needed a key of their own. Jocelyn laughed once, short and without warmth. Strangers get millions and your own daughter gets a lease renewal. Strangers did not put me in a utility room while waiting for my estate to become accessible. She collected her handbag. Joel didn't move. You set us up, she said. You kept everything secret so you could catch us failing. I kept my finances private before your father died. Your choices were yours. You could have told us about this building. Would the utility room have become unacceptable if you'd known? She didn't answer. That silence was the center of everything. If my comfort had depended on my balance sheet, it had never been care. Jocelyn left alone. Joel stayed at the table. After a long moment, he looked up. The guest room was usable when you arrived, he said quietly. I knew Jocelyn hadn't cleared it. I knew Cynthia was coming that weekend. I let both things happen because dealing with them seemed harder than finding you somewhere else to sleep. He paused. That was my decision, not hers. It was the first honest sentence he had offered without anything attached to it. I did not tell him it fixed everything. It didn't, but it was a beginning, and beginnings are not nothing. The lease renews in July at market rate, I said. That's all. He nodded. He thanked me for not making it worse, then he left. After the meeting, Mr. Achibi and I spent another hour going through documents. We updated the emergency contacts on my medical file. Joel's name came off. An independent healthcare advocate went on. Someone appointed to speak for me only if 2 physicians agreed I could no longer speak for myself. Until then, every decision remained mine. The change hurt in the way necessary things sometimes do. Joel had been on that form for years, put there in a moment of ordinary family trust. Removing him was not the end of love. It was the end of pretending that love and safety were the same thing. I wrote a letter for Sasha and Max explaining that the education accounts existed, that the money was for their schooling, and that no adult could access it on their behalf. They would receive copies when they were old enough to understand why I had been so specific. Finally, I went through Malcolm's objects one by one. His signet ring, his service pins from 3 decades of building Hadley, the ledger from our first year in business, which he had kept because he said anyone who forgot what they'd started with would eventually forget why they'd built anything at all. Each item had a clear future owner. Malcolm believed that things carrying memory deserved to be placed with intention, not inherited by proximity. 6 months after I moved into the suite at Hadley House, I began converting the ground floor of our second commercial building on Wilson Street in Hamilton into second key housing, 12 units, each with a private bedroom, a small sitting area, and a bathroom with a lock on the door. Each woman kept her own key. No family member could enter without her permission. I chose that last rule myself. The opening was held on a cold November morning. Mr. Ferris handed the first resident a brass key. She was 69. She had spent 8 months sleeping in her son's sunroom in Burlington after her husband died, making herself small so no one would notice how much room she was taking up. She stood in the doorway of her unit. She ran her hand along the doorframe. Then she began to cry. It has a window, she said, and it faces east. I thought of the utility room, the dryer, the note above the light switch about electricity. Sasha attended the opening with a friend from school. She stood at the back while I spoke and said nothing until afterward, when she helped carry boxes upstairs for the woman in Unit 4, refusing to leave until the last box was in. On the way out, she took my hand. Grandma. Yes. I'm glad you left, she said. I'm glad you had somewhere to go. I looked at her, this girl who had brought me 2 blankets and sat on a bucket and told me the truth when she didn't have to. So am I said. She squeezed my hand and let go, and walked out into the November air ahead of me, and I stood for a moment in the doorway of the Wilson Street building, listening to the sound of women settling into rooms that were finally theirs. A home is not the place where someone tolerates your presence while waiting for your estate to become accessible. It is the place where your comfort matters, even before they know what you are worth. I was 64 years old when I learned that Malcolm had been right all along. And I was very certain, standing in that doorway with the escarpment gray and enormous at the end of the street, that I would not forget it.